Hi everybody, today we are with the title Natural Selection, and this will be our topic for the day. And now you can see two images on the board that was just right behind me. They are talking about three fishing owls, as they say, feathery friends. One with a powerful beak, other with a normal, and the third one with a weak beak. And you can see that the one with the powerful beak was favored naturally, and that's what I would ask you to think. Have a coffee in your hand, and have a thought. And now, which of these owls do you think is most likely to survive into adulthood? Where do fishing owls live, and what adaptations do they have? Have a word in mind, and write your answers on a piece of paper if you have. If you don't, do them in your head. And now we can move on to the answers that we have. The answers will be coming in 3, in 2, and in 1 in the next slide. And here we have number 1, the answer. The owl with a powerful beak can crush bones, crack shells, or rip apart larger animals, which the ones with a normal or weak beak can not. Additionally, it can survive harsh times when easier prey are not found, and they have to hunt larger birds or prey. And the one with a powerful beak will be respected naturally, or will be selected naturally, because the one with a weak and normal beak would not find enough hunts or prey. So their first offspring might not be as fertile as the ones with a powerful beak. So the ones with the powerful beak will make more fertile offspring, so the generation will continue with the trait of powerful beak, and that will be the primary adaptation of a fishing owl in its native habitat. For number 2, we have where fishing owls do live, and we are beginning with number 2 now. And here's where fishing owls do live. They live in swamps, rivers, and mangroves. Basically, where you can find water, because they are, by the name that they're fishing owls. And here's the fishing owl, the animal that you were talking about. And now it's their beak, they're hooked to get fish. Sometimes where they hunt at also ice rivers like in Alaska or northern Russian habitats. And some live in tropical paradises like in South Asian climates. And they have sharp claws for gripping fish. Some fish are actually large in size, but they need a powerful beak and sharp claws to do so. And they have very large eyes because they need to hunt at night. And basically, when you live in the dark, or if you shut off your lights, all of the lights in your room, and look into a mirror, your eyes generally get larger. I mean, the black of the eye, the pupil gets large. So if you talk about them, their eyes are generally large because they have to see in the wild at night, and that's really hard. They have water resistant, less fluffy feathers that help them swim in the water if they have to chase after their prey. So now we'll move on to the next slide and see what comes up next. The Galapagos Islands is what we can see in the image. We will know more about it. So for now, it's an island 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador. When Darwin visited this island in 1835, he saw species like finches, giant tortoises, marine iguanas, and flightless birds that each adapted uniquely to their environments. Differences in beaks, shells, like here, and behavior showed how natural selection shapes survival. Survival is the word that you need to think. And here, as you see the word here, Darwin. Have a word in mind again. Who might he be? A magician, a poet, a religious scholar, or a priest? Here's what the Galapagos Island looks like. Have a word in mind. Until we have the next slide in 3, 2, and 1. He was neither a magician nor a priest. He was the well-known super scientist Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882. This old man looks weird. Alright, it's fine, but we won't look at his appearance, rather what he did. And that makes a difference at how we know life today. Charles Darwin sailed to the Galapagos in 1835 aboard his ship HMS Beagle. The ship was actually mapping the southern hemisphere and the waters of the Atlantic and the Pacific to the places that were unknown to the British. It usually some animals like finches and tortoises adapted differently on each island. Basically, Galapagos is a series of islands, not a single island itself, like you may think New Zealand is, or Greenland, or anything of that sort. These observations led him to develop the idea of natural selection that we just have talked about. His book on the origin of species, 1859, changed the way we understand life. So now I'm covering about Charles Darwin, but there was another something scientist alongside him. I wish if I could have talked more about him, but that is for another video. His name to know is Alfred Russel Wallace. Now we'll move on to the next slide. Well, I did not have to say 3, 2, and 1 this time. Darwin's voyage map about HMS Beagle, 1831 to 1836. And that's massive, that's 5 years aboard a ship. Imagine how long that is. Like a PhD degree. So he set out from Britain, the UK today, from Plymouth to Azores, Cape Verde, most of South America and the Galapagos, Cape Town, Mauritius, Cocos Island. That's a long thing. You can have a look if you want for now. And now I will go to the next slide in 3, 2, and 1. Oh wow! This time we have a chart describing the diet of the birds. So to know they are all finches, they are not crows or pigeons or peacocks as you say. So some of them are seed eaters, and now we can see they are not the pigeons or peacocks as we understand them. They are finches of the Galapagos Island who vary island by island. Like our fingerprints vary person by person. And now their beaks are specially suited for the environment and the things they eat. Some eat seeds, some cactus flowers, some insects, and some eat fruits. Have a look and think what you can understand. Well, I think it has been enough for you. So here are the names if you want to see it. But that's how their beak are shaped. For an example, the seed eaters, their beaks are basically, you can see they're thick. They have hollow space inside, so they can contain the seeds, have enough time to break them. And for the insect eaters, as you can see here, they're thin because they have to pick at the insects. And for the cactus eaters here, they're right at the middle. They are a bit hooked as you see, like here, this hook. You're like a fishing hook. Imagine a fishing rod and fishing hook when you fish. But they don't fish, they pick on cactus flowers. Cactus flowers are actually something very, very exotic. I will talk about that in another video, inshallah. We'll move on to the next slide in 3. Variation. Variation is when genes differ person by person, as I've said above. Natural variation means that some finches have slightly different beaks that were like they vary from island to island. According to Darwin, all tortoises and finches and iguanas that he saw varied because they had a common ancestor on mainland, but they went to the different islands. They suited best to their islands. The survival of the fittest. Have a word in mind about what it actually means. We'll come back to this at the end of the video. These finches would have been able to eat different types of food and avoid competition. They would therefore have suited and passed on their genes to their offspring. Over time, this trait would become dominant among the species. You can see 2 birds in the image. One is a florican and the other is some cactus-eating bird. Let me know the name if you know it, and here's some information about them and their diet. And now we'll move on to the next slide. This is an interesting story that we have of natural selection, possibly the most interesting one. So during the Industrial Revolution, Britain factories were making a lot of smoke and pollutants which were darkening the barks of trees. So when these moths were pale because trees' bark colors were pale, But when they become darker, they were easier to spot and even eventually eaten by birds. As you can see, these moths, they are pale and they are a bit darker in color. So they were not fit for the environment, so they got hunted. And they survived, so they made more offspring. And whatever they made, will pass to the next generation, the next generation. Like, remember your grandfather, they ate cooked food, so now you eat cooked food. So remember your ancestor for what they did. And parents will pass advantages, characteristics to offspring, and that's something normal. So we'll move on to the next slide if we do have one. Who of you can roll your tongue? Yes, I can do, yes. Let me know in the comments if you can. So the next slide, as we can see, if we can see in 3, 2 and 1. Yes, environment change. For an example, a disease has arrived and wipes out all people who cannot roll their tongue. So the ones who can roll their tongue will survive and pass on that genes to their offspring. So they will also have the same characteristics and they will be able to roll their tongues as well. So the next slide, long-term rollers, so they are gone. People who can roll tongues will survive and reproduce. The next slide, if we have one, variation and competition. Competition may be in jobs, education, business, as you call it. I have no idea how it works in other places. Each species shows variation which is caused by a mutation. Mutation is a change in the sequence of genes. The mutation can be good or bad. Sometimes it creates faulty protein that causes a disease in organisms. Sometimes, and you can see the competition is for mating, for food, living space, water, mates, etc. The next slide, if we have one. Oh wow, 2 giraffes, one lucky, one unlucky. The better adapted members of this species are more likely to survive. Survival of the fittest. That was exactly what I asked you to think about. Because the giraffe with the longer neck will have more access to food in the canopy. The layer that you can see now is the canopy. And if a giraffe can reach the immersion layer, it can basically or theoretically reach all of the layers from ground level to the high immersion layers. Number 4 is we see it has arrived with us. That these survivors will pass on their better genes to their offspring who will also show its beneficial variation. So now there are a lot of species that we can talk about, but we'll focus on just a few for an example. For the next slide, if we have one, and here is one exam style question about cheetahs who evolved over time to have an optimal leg length that made them fast but wouldn't break. As you know, cheetahs are the fastest land animals that we have on the planet. You can look at this image and have a word in mind and answer these questions until we return. I will assign you to have a stopwatch and assign a time for yourself for about 3 to 5 minutes. And now we will go for the answers. I guess they will be coming up in. Oh, they've come up. That's interesting, really. Cheetahs show variation in leg length. Cheetahs with optimal leg length are more likely to survive. The survivors will pass on the advantageous genes and to the offspring will also show the desirable characteristics. Number 4, over time generations of the best suited offspring with desirable characteristics reproduce until the mutation becomes the new norm. The new rule or the new person who dominates the class. And next slide please. So here are the definitions that we're talking about. If you have missed them, you can have a look. And that's all that we have for today. I hope the video was not too long for you, but I was trying to make things simpler. And thank you everybody. Ask me for if anything that is hard for you, I'll try and explain. Think that I'm your buddy. And this is Sarim Ahmed Tanvir zooming out.